Tonight, the urgent bid to keep the state's most dangerous criminals behind bars before they escape through a legal loophole.
The Water Minister finally breaks her silence over Adelaide's bill bungle, but question time yields few answers.
And cutting a fair deal for working fathers. Calls for a national scheme of paid leave for mums and dads.
News at 5 with George Donikian and Rebecca Morse.
Also tonight, a heavily pregnant teen rushed to hospital, doused with acid during a southern suburbs fight.
Adelaide's desalination plant a step closer as a trial takes shape off Port Stanvac.
And a buyer's guide to used car safety. Pre-owned people movers with protection for less than $5,000.
Good evening. Emergency legislation is being rushed through Parliament tonight to keep some of the state's worst criminals behind bars. The action closes a loophole in existing laws that could set free murderers and rapists.
Kevin Reilly is serving a 23-year sentence for the most chilling of crimes on the most innocent of victims. 7-year-old Sean Phillips was strangled at Brooklyn Park in the late 1980s. Reilly and his brother Jim were convicted of murder and attempted rape. The parole board has repeatedly refused their release, but a legal loophole could give the Reilly brothers and at least 8 other serious criminals automatic parole.
We are worried that a decision of the Court of Criminal Appeal could lead to 10 hardened criminals, among whom are convicted murderers, being released onto the streets of Adelaide.
The government was jolted into action following a Supreme Court application by Shane Andrews, who's serving a life sentence for a shooting murder in Aberfoyle Park in 1991. Andrews has been repeatedly denied bail, but claims he should be released automatically because he was convicted before truth in sentencing laws were introduced in 1994. The opposition says the application could trigger a flood of appeals from prisoners serving lengthy sentences.
There could be as many as 20 prisoners in this state who were incarcerated prior to the legislation in 1994.
Andrew's ex-partner has assumed a new identity, fearing his release. She's said her greatest fear is that he'll come for her children. He sent threatening letters saying he was innocent and that if he really was a murderer, he could have got someone on the outside to kill me. It wouldn't surprise me if he tried to get me or the kids. The legislation has passed the House of Assembly. The government is now racing to gain upper house approval ahead of the Supreme Court's decision on Andrew's appeal. Matt Doran, 10 News.
A gruesome final chapter of the Snowtown murders is closing in the Supreme Court. A sex abuse victim will be sentenced for the bashing murder of a pedophile, the same pedophile who abused serial killer James Vlasakis.
Convicted pedophile Jeffrey Payne suffered a violent death, brutally bashed near his Northfield home in April last year by an angry sex abuse victim, teenager Timothy Schaefer. Today, during sentencing submissions in the Supreme Court, Schaefer's lawyer Greg Mead said his client had simply snapped after a decade of physical and sexual abuse. It's as if Payne came to represent to Schaefer the various people who had beaten, abused, molested and mistreated him. A similar motive was given by James Vlasakis when he was jailed over 4 of the 11 Snowtown murders. Payne had abused Vlasakis as a child, ultimately leading the disturbed teenager into the clutches of gang leader John Bunting, who had a hatred for pedophiles. Schaefer also showed the same ferocity. The court heard he visited Payne after a night of drinking. They argued and Schaefer stabbed Payne in the leg before viciously bashing and ultimately strangling him. Neighbours told police of hearing thudding like a basketball bouncing on the ground. Schaefer, who was 18 at the time, stomped so hard on Payne's head it crushed his skull. Schaefer will be sentenced later. Kimberly Harper, 10 News.
Water Minister Carleen Maywald has finally defended her role in the SA water billing blunder. She maintains she didn't know the price hikes would be backdated, something the opposition finds hard to believe.
Some involved in the $10 million water bill fiasco are still steaming, but like the Treasurer and the Premier, Water Security Minister Carleen Maywald is happy to shoulder the blame.
We were wrong. That the legislation meant that it would be backdated to December, and we did not have a full comprehension of that fact.
Can we really believe that the Water Security Minister who runs SA Water had no idea about the billing system SA Water uses? Give me a break.
SA Water has also apologised for backdating the 13% price hikes to December last year, instead of applying them at the beginning of this month. Labor's top two were both interstate when the bungle was revealed last Friday. The opposition demanded details of who knew what.
In the early evening, late afternoon, early evening, received a message from my office, and my response was, fix it.
Late in the afternoon. What's the big deal about it? I mean, I've said publicly, Mr. Speaker, there's no huge conspiracy issue.
Away from the politics, all most people care about is how and when they're getting their money back. The bad news is it might not happen until December.
There's no word yet on whether customers will get a cheque reimbursement or a reduction on their next bill. Daniela Retorto, 10 News.
The widow of the man killed in the Beaconsfield mine collapse has told of her grief at the opening of the inquest into her husband's death. Jackie Knight says she hopes the inquiry will prevent others from suffering a similar fate.
For Larry Knight's widow Jackie and brother Shane, the start of the coronial inquest is the latest and most important part of their search for answers. In a statement read on Jackie's behalf by the family's lawyers, she spoke of her pain.
I simply don't want any other mining family to experience the pain that we have experienced.
Lawyers for the mine's management told the court that while there had been rockfalls deep below Beaconsfield in the months prior to Larry Knight's death, all possible safety checks had been made. They said the collapse on Anzac Day in 2006 was caused by a massive, unforeseeable seismic event. The mine's lawyers then raised concerns that some senior miners who heroically rescued Todd Russell and Brant Webb were now being blamed for the collapse.
The question is being asked, was anyone to blame? And we are saying quite clearly no.
In a surprise move, lawyers for Beaconsfield Gold withdrew from the inquest, saying they would only return to support and cross-examine senior mine management.
The family are disappointed by what transpired today.
Beaconsfield Gold, which had attempted to shut down the inquest earlier this month, says it has no more evidence to give and its involvement will only distress the family more.
We don't see that our being there to cross-examine witnesses would in any way ease their difficulty through this process.
The inquest will move to Beaconsfield tomorrow, where coroner Rod Chandler will examine the area where Larry Knight died. In Launceston, James Wakeland, 10 News.
The Rudd government claims it's already halfway to cutting hospital waiting lists, but the states are warning they'll seek compensation if health insurance changes drive more patients to public hospitals.
Kevin Rudd launched a new book on his winning campaign this morning.
I recognise you.
A key election promise was to immediately pump $150 million into state hospitals to cut elective surgery queues. 25,000 extra procedures in the first year was the target. 14,000 have now been performed.
To be able to then already get to 55% of the procedures that we're committed to is really excellent work.
State health ministers are already concerned over increasing demands on their hospitals, with possibly more to come, as many people are allowed to abandon private health insurance.
If there is evidence that it has had such an impact, then I'll be the first to put up my hand to say we should be compensated for that.
We expect that the Australian Healthcare Agreement will be flexible enough to ensure that the states are appropriately remunerated for any increase in demand.
Not looking so healthy, Brendan Nelson's hold on the Liberal leadership, thanks to relentless speculation that former Treasurer Peter Costello will remain in Parliament and be pressed into the top job. Would Dr Nelson stand aside to let it happen? Maybe.
And I'm certainly not going to talk about hypotheticals in the future, but I'm very determined that I will lead the Liberal Party and the opposition to the next election.
Paul Bongiorno, 10 News.
Coming up, one of the world's most wanted men captured after 13 years on the run, and a coffee break of a very different kind in the US.
And in sport, Kane Corns talks about the showdown and in particular what made the coach so angry with him. Marty Mattner on the Crows' finals chances. No go for the Thunderbirds, so who are they targeting for next year? The Opals target Beijing and they're aiming for gold. And why Cadell Evans fears the big Russian in France.
Well, it's been a cold, dry day, which means that we're looking forward to a cold, frosty night with temperatures falling way below average. It also means that there will be widespread frost, which is a concern for our market gardeners, especially those north of the city. It's very likely that we'll see widespread frost again tomorrow night and on Thursday night, but by Friday there will be some late showers around. Well, I'll be back at 5 to 6 with all the latest on what's happening with this cold weather.
Dr. Jayant Patel is a free man, released from the Brisbane Watch House a short time ago after finally posting bail. Dr. Patel had spent 4 months in custody in the US and a day and a half in the Watch House before he was released. He walked out the front door of the court with his lawyer after posting the $20,000 surety and meeting all of the bail conditions.
Mr. Patel has fulfilled his cash deposit and he's now on bail. He'll be going at an undisclosed residential location and he'll now start preparing his defense once he's recovered from his sleep and gets a bit of rest. We ask that you respect his privacy and try and leave him in peace. And he won't be making any public statements or answering any questions until the trial is very well over. And nor will I be making any public statements now after today.
Queensland taxpayers will foot the estimated $3 million bill to accommodate Dr. Patel until his trial.
One of the world's most wanted war criminals has been caught after a manhunt lasting more than a decade. The former Bosnian Serb leader Radovan Karadzic accused of masterminding the worst massacre since World War II.
They celebrated on the streets of Sarajevo as word of the arrest began to spread. The announcement came late at night on Serbian TV. A statement from the president confirming Radovan Karadzic had been taken into custody. The wartime Bosnian Serb leader had been in hiding since 1996 after he was charged with genocide and crimes against humanity. The victims, more than 7,000 Muslim men and boys massacred by his troops in the town of Srebrenica, and thousands more civilians shot and shelled in the siege of Sarajevo.
It definitely gives some hope for the families of the victims that the justice is going to be served.
The arrest of Radovan Karadzic is, I hope, the chance for a new beginning in the region.
According to his lawyer, Karadzic was arrested on a bus in Serbia. It's claimed his hideout had been under surveillance for weeks after a tip-off from foreign spies. Karadzic is being held inside the war crimes court in Belgrade, where supporters gathered in protest. Several were arrested. Authorities now hope to extradite the 63-year-old to The Hague to face a UN criminal tribunal.
His arrival should happen in the near future. We don't have the exact date at which point he will have the initial appearance before the judges.
The high-profile arrest is seen as a sign Serbia is prepared to cooperate with the UN, boosting its chances of acceptance into the European Union. Daniel Sutton, 10 News.
A sign of change in Zimbabwe. Sworn enemies Robert Mugabe and Morgan Tsvangirai shook hands and smiled for the cameras after signing an agreement to hold talks on power sharing.
We shall be doing this as Zimbabweans, entirely as Zimbabweans with the help of South Africa.
South African President Thabo Mbeki negotiated the apparently good-humoured first meeting between the Zimbabwean president and the opposition leader in a decade.
An American diner is counting himself lucky after an out-of-control van crashed into his favourite coffee shop. Kenneth Anderson was reading the newspaper when the speeding vehicle smashed through the cafe window, slamming him into the counter. After grabbing his cap, he managed to free himself and finally walk away.
I shot out in Vietnam, jumped out of airplanes and everything, but I've never had nothing like that happen to me.
Doctors were amazed to find that he suffered only cuts and bruises. The 60-year-old driver says she blacked out moments before losing control. Incredible.
She just really wanted a coffee. Ahead in 10 News, Terry's triumph, the nana who helped Big Brother go out with a bang.
And safe motoring doesn't necessarily mean parting with big bucks. We'll list the second-hand cars that are deemed the best performers.
Safe motoring doesn't necessarily mean spending a lot of money on a new car. A study shows you can buy a second-hand vehicle that gives good crash protection for just $5,000.
Great news for consumers on a tight budget. They can buckle up in a vehicle with a high safety rating without the expense of a new model.
And it's often young people who are still learning how to drive can now get into relatively affordable used cars that have got a good safety record from actual accident data that's out there in the real world.
The used car safety rating released by the RAA highlights a number of cars in the small to medium range with a price tag of between $5,000 and $15,000. Among the best performers, the Peugeot 306, the VW Golf and Mazda 3. In the medium category, the Holden Vectra is the cheapest.
There's no real surprises in the sense that if they get a good NCAP score, this was a crash test score when they're new, we're starting to see data now that's saying when they're actually out in the real world, they're also delivering safer outcomes for motorists as well.
The results come from crash data covering more than 3 million vehicles over 20 years to 2006 throughout Australasia. European and Japanese designs dominated the best performers, but although some Australian cars were above average, only one was in the best category. That was the VY Commodore. Commercial vans didn't rate too well, only the Ford Transit scored above the safety average. Some relatively new cars like the Hyundai Getz didn't perform well either. And the worst rated vehicle was the Daihatsu Rocky, made between 1985 and 98. Rick Teague, 10 News.
An iconic 60s US muscle car has been reborn with the help of Australian expertise. The production version of the Camaro had a starring role in last year's blockbuster The Transformers. The model was predominantly designed and engineered in Australia, but will only be sold in the US.
Just excitement. I mean, just the adrenaline from sitting in a car that's built purely as a statement.
The Camaro will hit American streets early next year with a price tag of $40,000 US. It's not bad.
It's finally over. After 8 years, 146 housemates and plenty of headlines, Big Brother has been evicted. The last winner also making some history is the oldest contestant to take out the title.
There was only one way to bid farewell to Big Brother, and that was with a big bash. The happiest person in the room, 52-year-old Terry Munro, $250,000 richer, with her place in television history guaranteed as the oldest and last Big Brother winner.
I'm still really overwhelmed. It's amazing here.
Fast forward to this morning and the powerhouse Gran was busy adjusting to her new fame, doing back-to-back interviews with no sleep. How do you think your workmates are going to react?
I already know. I rang them this morning. Some of them were crying.
Terry has no plans to quit the supermarket job she's had for 26 years, just cut back on the hours a bit so she can travel. But for
Reviewing the day's top stories, Water Minister Carleen Maywald has finally defended her role in the SA Water billing blunder, saying she didn't know the price hikes would be backdated.
Dr Jayant Patel has been released from the Brisbane Watch House after posting $20,000 bail.
And emergency legislation is being rushed through Parliament to keep some of the state's worst criminals behind bars. The action closes a loophole in existing laws that could set free murderers and rapists. A pregnant teenager has been doused in acid during an argument on a street at Marion. She's been treated for serious burns while police hunt her attacker. Reporter Brett Clappers has the details.
The attack on the 19-year-old woman who is 6 months pregnant occurred here in a car park in front of the Centrelink office at the Marion Shopping Centre. Witnesses say it was an argument between her partner and another young man that just escalated out of control. It started with both parties throwing large pieces of concrete at each other. Now, a man who described himself to us only as Nick was driving by in a full maintenance van. He said he stopped and tried to break up the fight. That's when it turned nasty. One of the men involved in the argument picked up a bottle of hydrochloric acid from the van. He threw it at the pregnant woman and her partner. Most of it landed on the woman, some on her partner's arm. He fled the scene. She was treated here at the nearby medical centre for severe burns and some inhalation. It was then they were rushed to the Flinders Medical Centre.
I threw concrete in at him through the window there, and he grabbed a bottle of my acid and doused him in it.
Yeah, it was just a lot of commotion and people running around trying to squirt water onto her because it was the pool acid.
Fire crews spent the next hour hosing down the van and the surrounding areas. Witnesses say the man who allegedly threw the acid was last seen running through the Marion Shopping Centre car park. He was wearing green shorts and he's known to police.
Brett Clappers reporting. A crime spree in the western suburbs has left parents furious. Vandals smashed 150 windows at 2 high schools and a kindergarten.
Not a good start to the first day of term. Vandals smashed their way through 3 schools, leaving behind a hefty clean-up bill and some very unimpressed parents.
I just can't understand the logic of anyone wanting to be out in a 4-degree night for a start, and secondly to rob the children who some are already disadvantaged as it is.
Rocks and a metal bar were used in the senseless attacks of Lefevre High School at Semaphore South, Ocean View College at Taparoo and Westport Primary School at Semaphore Park. As repairs continue, classes at each of the schools have had to relocate, and it may be a while yet before they can return.
Well, this sort of thing is a real disaster for the children because we have 4-year-olds in here in our child parent centre, and so we have to be really, really judicious about making sure the glass is all gone before we can allow them in.
The vandals made no attempts to break into any of the schools, focusing instead on causing as much damage as possible. And there are no second guesses who will be left to foot the bill.
Look, I'm an honest Australian citizen paying my taxes, so I'm like every other one. I don't like it at all.
The damage could reach $20,000, and parents are afraid it could be their children who miss out.
Hopefully they'll be caught and hopefully we can bring them in front of our children and say, and this is why you won't be getting something new this term because of these people here.
Police door-knocked the area and are now looking for 2 men aged in their 30s seen near Westport Primary School about 2 p.m. Ben Way, 10 News.
Police are looking to sock it to a thief who used a car to hammer his way into a tool shop at Cowandilla. The maroon Nissan smashed through the doors at Coventry Fasteners on Sir Donald Bradman Drive. The driver then selected 2 toolkits before finally making his escape. Now, he's described as Caucasian, wearing a beanie, and last seen tooling down nearby Hilton Road. Police want to hear from anyone who saw the break-in.
The fight against illegal drugs is turning to the tools of the trade. The government has outlined new laws banning equipment used in cannabis production. Prohibited items include high-intensity lamps, reflectors and carbon filters used in hydroponic crops.
From the amount of hydroponic equipment sold in South Australia, you would think South Australia was the hydroponic tomato cultivation capital of Australia.
Jail terms and fines of $10,000 will apply.
The Sex Discrimination Commissioner has found working fathers are crying out for a fair go. After a 12-month listening tour, the Commissioner says that dads want family-friendly hours, but they fear damaging their careers.
From the corporate office to the factory floor, it's fathers who are now feeling the pressure
A national review revealing they find it harder than women to access flexible work hours so they can help out at home. Those that did complained of being relegated to the daddy track.
They're seen not as a serious player. So you're not a serious player, you're not committed to the workplace, therefore should you be promoted. And look, it's the same issue that women come up with as well.
National Australia Bank boss Michael Ulmer does work flexible hours. He believes managers need to show the way.
The reality, of course, is that people who work flexible hours part-time are often far more productive than people who work in full-time roles.
Even those yet to enter the workforce know the biggest hurdles are still faced by women.
Rather than having it all, there's a sense that women are doing it all.
The review found the Australian workforce remains far from equal. Women earn only 84 cents to every dollar their male counterparts bring home. And for part-time workers, that's much less. Only a handful of women occupy the top jobs in our top 200 companies, and 28% are complaining about being sexually harassed.
One woman told me the story of how she was working in a supermarket, she was on the checkout and she was asked to wear a see-through top.
A national phone survey hopes to identify our most sexist industries and whether modern technologies like email are adding to the problem. Ali Donaldson, 10 News.
Teachers in Western Australia are now the country's highest paid after a 21% pay offer over 5 years. South Australian teachers are still haggling with the Rand government and are threatening a series of rolling stoppages early this term. They want 21% over 3 years and have been offered less than half that. Class sizes and a proposed new funding model for schools are also sticking points.
The pipeline for Adelaide's trial desalination plant has been connected, allowing testing to begin within a fortnight. 800 metres of discharge pipe was floated, then sunk into deeper waters off the Port Stanback site. Contractors are waiting for favourable weather before the 1.5 kilometre intake pipe is finally towed from Taparoo Beach. The plant will determine environmental effects ahead of the proposed $1 billion full-scale project by the year 2011.
Forget wheelchairs, Adelaide paraplegics are tearing up the racetrack in hand-controlled go-karts. Now they're revving up for race day.
Swapping one set of wheels for another. Paraplegics at the Southern Go-Kart Club putting 2 new hand-controlled karts to the test.
The hand controls have been modified such that instead of having a right-hand foot throttle, they have a similar to a motorbike throttle on the right hand. And normally on a go-kart, your brake is on the left side. They have just a hand control similar to a motorbike as well.
Back on track for the first time, former professional dirt kart driver Rodney Topsfield, who lost movement in his legs in a dirt bike crash 8 years ago.
Awesome fun. Best feeling ever. Something never thought you'd get to do again, so it helps.
They thought that being bound in a wheelchair, that life in many areas can't continue, but this gives an opportunity to get out there and have a great time and really enjoy some thrills.
Well, the more activities you've got access to, the better, for sure, and being a bit of an adrenaline junkie to something with a bit of power is good.
Each kart is worth about $6,000. The club's next move is to raise enough money for 2 more. Those on the track today are already talking about buying their own.
I reckon that I could come out here and probably collect some cans on the weekend and save up for one. It'd be something that I'd definitely do. It was fantastic fun.
The club now hopes to train juniors for competition. Kate Freeban, 10 News.
Yeah, certainly looks the goods. Well, we wish them well. OK, let's talk sport for a moment with Mark Aiston. The season may well be over for one club, Mark, but Port Adelaide actually believes it's found the missing ingredient from its that big win over the Crows.
Yeah, that's right, George, and they want to use it against another team that they despise on Sunday. We'll hear from Kane Corns in just a moment. Also ahead, a former Crow thinks Adelaide will still make the finals. And can the Thunderbirds keep their squad together to turn heartbreak into inspiration next season?
Tonight's sports report brought to you by the new Subway Fresh Fit Meals. A tasty, low-fat sub, new better for your sides like drinks, apple slices and yoghurt. Subway, play hard, eat fresh.
Hi folks, Port Adelaide's passion is considered the key ingredient to repeating their showdown win more often. Now they feel they played for each other on the weekend and they'll be looking to enhance that unity when they play another team that they hate on Sunday. In Shuttleworth is with Kane Corns.
Why hasn't the Power been able to replicate that sort of performance that you did in the showdown in every other week?
Well, that's $1 million question and something we spoke about with the leaders on Monday. I think the passion and the emotion we show during the showdowns is something we can take into every game, especially the next 6 weeks and this week against Freo, so that's what we'll be trying to do.
What about the situation on your half-back line? You stayed with Andrew McLeod. Brad Symes was then allowed to go and get the footy. If you had your time again, what would you do?
Oh, I definitely would have gone and tried to impact on the contest with Brad Symes. It was a really poor option by me. My teammates certainly let me know that was the wrong thing to do, which was great by them. But because McLeod's such a dangerous kick inside 50, that's the reason why I stayed with him. But if I had my time again, definitely would have gone and tackled Symesy.
You and Crow Scott Thompson are presumed to be good mates, but he's throwing you around on the weekend. What's going on there?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I thought we were mates, me and Scotty, but I might have to re-look at that. He was throwing his weight around, very angry during the showdown, but I think that's because Dom Cassisi gave him a nice old stitch-up.
What about this weekend? Freo and the Power don't normally have too many nice games. There's plenty of niggle. Can we expect more of the same?
Yeah, it's fair to say we don't like each other at all. We've had some pretty good battles in the past, and certainly in one internal trial game there was a big fight, which we all remember when we play them. But they've got Pavlich, who's in ripping form, so whoever gets him has got a big job.
Best of luck. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks guys. Former Crow Marty Mattner firmly believes his old teammates will make the finals despite their recent poor form in his first year at Sydney. Mattner says Adelaide's regimented approach is one of their greatest strengths. He plays against his former club for the very first time on Saturday night. The 25-year-old is now comfortably settled in the Harbour City and hasn't received any jibes from the Crows lately.
Not this week. Like I said, I speak to them regularly, probably a few of the boys now and then, and yeah, keep in contact with a lot of them.
Mattner played 98 games for the Crows before they happily traded him to the Swans at the end of last season. Still footy, and in Melbourne, Geelong has officially ruled Gary Ablett out of Friday night's blockbuster. It'll be a big one against Hawthorn at the MCG because of his ankle injury. And Terry Wallace has joined fellow coaches Lee Matthews and Mark Williams in applauding Joel Bowden's time-wasting tactics in the Tigers' win over Essendon. But he believes ultimately the rule should be changed.
Terry Wallace is no longer feeling as crook as a dog after overcoming breathing difficulties and asthmatic episodes to coach on Saturday.
I was really struggling for breath. I had probably even an episode on the Thursday and the Friday night, which was fairly unpleasant to sort of say the least, which had me on sort of oxygen and nebuliser.
Wallace strongly defended Joel Bowden's time-wasting tactics and calmness under pressure.
We've got blokes who are out on their feet that weren't offering up a lot in regards to movement because they were just shot. Do you pull the trigger and make a horrible mistake, or do you hold onto the ball and have the patience to be able to sort of set up again?
But he agrees the lawmakers should look at doing something to stop it from happening regularly.
My thoughts would be that the ball shouldn't, or the time shouldn't start until the ball's touched in play.
The Tigers face the Brisbane Lions Saturday night and must win if they are to make finals. Rob Waters, 10 News.
Thank you, Rob. Well, the Thunderbirds' focus has now turned to planning for next season rather than their dream for a championship. Re-signing English defender Jiva Mentor is now a priority after their preliminary final loss to the Magic.
Finishing third in the Trans-Tasman competition was above outside expectations, but little consolation to the Thunderbirds after a heartbreaking 2-goal loss.
Very disappointing. It's a very tough coming back and realising that you haven't made the grand final.
A third quarter lapse cost Adelaide dearly. The Magic broke open the game with 7 straight goals.
We've got the talent there. It's just been able to put it all together, and I guess experience as well, having a really young squad. It's new out there. Some of them haven't played in sort of final positions before.
While the coach is confident of keeping the core of the squad together, she may not have a say in Jiva Mentor's future. The star keeper meets with the English coach next month, and even though she'd like to remain a Thunderbird, it'll depend on family and national team commitments.
Definitely coming off this game, it's like it's unfinished business, so I'm eager to get back there and almost take revenge and show them what we're worth, because I felt that last night's game didn't really show where we're at and our true standard, and I think we can go all the way.
Strengthening the midcourt is another priority, the coach not ruling out the return of retired Australian wing attack Laura von Berto.
Well, we said the door's always open. Again, we always have room in our program for top elite players, so we certainly look at every option.
Defender Monia Gerard and goalie Nat Medhurst are already signed for next season. Nikki Barnett, 10 News.
Well, Cadell Evans has declared Russian Denis Menchov the man to beat heading into the final 6 stages of the Tour de France. After a much-needed day off, Evans will start tonight's 16th stage back in team colours. He relinquished the yellow jersey to Frank Schleck after the last stage.
Yeah, he's riding really well, and before the start of the tour, this first rest day and also the second rest day, he remains my favourite for yellow in Paris.
It's going to be tough. I know it's not going to be easy. Cadell, he's a specialist in time trial, and I'm realistic, and I'm not. But I don't know. I just know that if you have the yellow jersey, you can do amazing things.
Saturday night's time trial is expected to decide the overall winner. It's getting exciting. The world champion Opals are ready for battle ahead of the Beijing Olympics, a 3-day boot camp at an army training base in southeastern Queensland has the team gunning for gold.
For athletes used to more comfortable surrounds, 3 days of roughing it with the army was always going to be an adventure, but an adventure with purpose. Team building, leadership and trust in each other. All vital to unite this team ahead of the Games.
Different life skills, ways to lead and just basically team build. It's been just a really great experience.
While back-to-back Olympic silver medals has fueled the desire for Beijing success.
And the United States just too good on the night.
The 2006 World Championship crown provides the confidence.
But the reality for the coaching staff and the staff in general and the players, we all know there's a long haul before we get to that gold medal game.
Big gun Lauren Jackson is preparing as if for war. Her teammates also have Australia's first Olympic basketball gold medal in their sights. Before that, a 2-match series against Brazil in Sydney and Wollongong, the team's first games on home soil in 8 years, and a chance to play in front of family and friends.
Especially before the Olympics, so it's going to be fun to get out there and just have a run around and put the old bodysuit back on again.
That's where the fun ends, and they're hoping the hard work from the boot camp begins to pay off, trading the Army greens for Beijing gold.
It's up to us to pull together and make sure we deliver our best, and our best is good enough to win gold. We have to keep everyone else behind us.
Rob Hazel, 10 News.
Well, finally, Adelaide United has signed promising striker Robert Eunice as the club moves to finalise its playing roster ahead of the A-League season. Eunice is currently the leading goal scorer in the New South Wales Premier League and has signed a 2-year deal. Great news. Now it's back to George and Beck.
Oh, you remembered. Thank you very much, Mark. Another freezing night ahead. Jane Reilly will join us next with the chilly details.
And have you got a ticket? The nation braces for a record $50 million jackpot draw.
New Mazda 3 Max Sport with satellite navigation, Bluetooth and dynamic stability control. New generation Mazda 3, everything you unexpected.
Hello, well a great view tonight from the 7th floor of the KPMG building in Hindmarsh Square, and even though the temperature has dropped below 10 degrees it doesn't feel that cold because there's very little wind. Now if we take a look at today's sky camera pictures we can see quite a lot of cloud about the Adelaide Hills. This is mainly high level cloud associated with a high pressure system moving to the south, so it's unlikely that we'll see any showers. In fact, that cloud that you can see now will clear overnight and it's going to be cold and frosty once again. Now today our maximum temperature just got in at 13.8 degrees at 1:45 this afternoon after a low of 6, and currently at the Weather Bureau it's 9 degrees. Out in the suburbs today, Elizabeth had a top of 14 degrees, 15 at Murray Bridge, 12 for Mount Barker, and Noarlunga had a high of 13. Around the state, the highest rainfall gauging was 2 millimetres at Kingscote. Temperatures were below average, with maxima ranging from 18 degrees at Oodnadatta to 10 at Mount Crawford. And this morning in Renmark it was pretty cold, with the mercury getting down to -1. Interstate today, they had some showers in Townsville, and Canberra a cold start with -2 for a minimum. Looking at the satellite photograph, our state is mainly cloud free due to a large slow moving high. Clear skies and light winds will produce widespread frost tomorrow morning, and similar conditions are expected again on Tuesday, but on Friday it's likely we'll see a late shower or two. The greatest likelihood of rain tomorrow will be over Queensland and also parts of Western Australia. Interstate, the temperature will get down to -3 in Canberra tonight, and then tomorrow there'll be rain for Brisbane, windy in Townsville, and showers are forecast for Perth again. Expected maxima for our state range from 12 degrees in Mount Gambier to 18 in Ceduna after a cold, frosty night. For the outer metropolitan area, Elizabeth and Murray Bridge both 15, Mount Barker 11, and Noarlunga tomorrow looking at a top of 13 degrees. On local waters, east to northeast winds 3 to 8 knots, increasing to northeast to north winds at 8 to 13 knots, and seas to ½ a metre. Now the state forecast includes a high risk of frost for all districts except the Adelaide Plains, where the risk is moderate, and after a cold frosty night tomorrow will be mainly fine and sunny. For Adelaide tonight we're looking at a low of just 4 degrees and a top tomorrow of 15. The Bureau says that during daylight hours it will be fine and sunny. Further ahead, a repeat performance for us on Thursday, and then Friday cloud increasing with some late showers, and then it looks like we'll have showers through Saturday and Sunday morning, but those showers will start to clear by Sunday evening. But there's not much coming in that system. We're maybe looking at 2 to 3 millimetres across the agricultural areas, just enough to keep those moisture levels up, but not a really good soaking. Well, that's all for me tonight. Beck, I might just take in the view. It looks pretty good, doesn't it? Back to you in the studio.
It's a great view, Jane. Thank you. $1 million view, in fact, but there are 50 million reasons to enter tonight's record Oz Lotto draw. It's the second jackpot in as many months, equalling the biggest advertised offer in any Australian lottery.
I don't think anyone has any idea what to do with 50 million.
I'd have a crack. Players are expected to spend almost $70 million on more than 4 million entries. If it doesn't go off, the jackpot should reach 60 million. I'll still turn up for work though.
Would you?
I don't know, ask me tomorrow. I didn't enter though, so.
Late news coming up 10:30.
Good night.